I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So as I mentioned, I have a little bit of a lull before my 5 weeks of craziness. And I got my hair cut on Friday. I left the salon and got hit on twice. So if that's not everybody's dream when you leave a hair salon, I don't know what is, because you feel like you drop hundreds of dollars. You're like, please make this worth it. So I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Charlie. She works at Beehive Salon over in Queen Anne. And yeah, I'm so glad for that. And then my other thing, on Saturday, I went and got a massage for my friend. She was doing kind of family and friends out of her house in her spare room, and she just moved to rent her own studio in Eastlake. So her name's Kat Murray. I wanted to give her a shout out because I just want to support my friends. They did not pay me to do this, but yeah. So I'll put the information in the show notes. And then this weekend, my mom's visiting, so I probably will do a little bit of a recap next episode about the adventures of Catherine Horgan. Anyway, that is that. So I'm going to introduce my guest. We've got Jasmine Donovan, President and CEO of Dick's Drive-In. Hi.
Hello.
This is not the first time we've met. We met when you were a Woman of Influence in 2019. I remember you came in for your photo shoot and such. And then I think it was Family Business Awards you also spoke at or got an award, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah. Several years ago.
Yeah. So I remember doing some research on you. So it's good to see you again. And so I talk about this podcast a lot, obviously. And every time they're like, oh, who do you have on? I'm like, oh, well, this person. And then, yeah, I've got the CEO of Dick's coming on, and people lose their minds. Do you feel that? Like there's this passion for Dick's Drive-In that I don't notice in other types of restaurants. Do you feel that when you're like networking?
Absolutely. Every time you mention, and not just for me in my position, but for lots of people who work for us, when they mention where they work, or for me, what my family business is, everyone wants to tell their Dick's Drive-In story, right? Mm-hmm. Either people have no idea what you're talking about, or they're so excited and they want to tell you their Dick's Drive-In story. And that's true whether you're in Seattle or in another country, really? On an airplane. It's amazing where you run into folks who have a passion for Dick's Drive-Ins.
They sure do. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of that cult following later on. But I wanted to give the background on you. You're the granddaughter of the founder, Dick Spady. I posted on my Instagram what questions I should ask you. And one question was, why is it called Dick's? So I'm guessing that's why. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Oh, yeah. There's more to it. Okay. And she grew up in the family business, working on and off since 16, officially joining the executive team in 2013. And then you took over as president from your father in 2019. She's also, by the way, in the middle of doing all of that, decided to join the Navy. So you're a Navy veteran with degrees in math, chemistry, and business. Jasmine also serves on the boards of Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, the Rainier Club, and Evergreen Operating Companies. Sound about right?
Yeah, that about covers it.
I listened to a podcast episode of yours, and when you were working at Dick's when you were 16, you used your mom's maiden name, right? So that people wouldn't know that you were like the owner's daughter.
Yes.
You were like undercover boss, but undercover worker.
And I honestly, it was before undercover boss was a thing. Yeah. I wasn't trying to do it for that reason. I didn't want to get treated differently. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't there to be figuring out how it really works. I mean, I was, and I didn't want to get treated differently because of my family connection. Yeah. I did get found out, though. It's a fun story. It was before the ubiquitousness of cell phones, and I was late because I got stuck driving over the bridge. I got caught in traffic, and the manager on duty called the phone number for me on my employee card, and it went to my dad's voicemail. My dad is president of the company at the time. And the shift manager was like, wait, why is the number for Jasmine going to our president's voicemail? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. I was found out by then. The store manager knew who I was, but everyone else in the store didn't. And the shift managers found out at that point. Yeah. So
I think that's so smart, though, because it helps you understand, like, what is it actually like working there? And you kind of it just makes you a better leader at the end of the day. So that's very cool. And then you were teaching, what was it? Nuclear something or other in the Navy?
My job in the Navy was that I was an instructor at the Navy Nuclear Power Training Command in Charleston, South Carolina.
Wow.
And I got a chance to teach math and physics and radiological fundamentals and heat transfer and some other things. I got to lead a teaching division. I got to be the command public affairs officer. The military is, for many people, just an option expanding choice. And there's a lot of opportunities to raise your hand and volunteer and get to do things that you wouldn't otherwise have opportunities to do.
And do you feel like it translates into kind of what you do today?
Absolutely. The leadership training and experience there was phenomenal. And again, by making the most of the opportunities that I had there, I learned things that set me up extremely well for my future here at Dick's.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk more, I think, later on about the decision to come back, the decision to be a CEO and all of that. So I have a fun question I got asked multiple times. How much do you actually eat, Dick's? What's your order and how much do you eat at Dick's Burgers?
That's a great question and one I get a lot. We eat at Dick's Drive-In. I say we because my family is often involved in this at least once a week. I have a 12 and a 9-year-old son, and they are big fans, and it's a great place for us to stop as a family on the way to baseball practice, on the way back from basketball practice, after a football game, after a hockey game. There's always an excuse and a desire. And Holman Road happens to be the location, or Crown Hill. Some folks call it Crown Hill, but Holman Road is the location where I worked as a crew member. It's also the location that we drive by the most often and where I go to the most with my kids. So we celebrate the first day of school, the last day of school.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's really fun.
When my first job was teriyaki chicken and rice place, and I remember at one point being like, I could never eat teriyaki chicken and rice ever again. So I'm glad that it's still good for you.
Oh, and my order I didn't say is usually a deluxe and a fry. Although I had a friend tip me off on 2 cheeseburgers with the chopped onions in between. So you take off the 2 bottom buns and then you put chopped onions in between, and then you put the 2 patties together. It's so good.
I thought there were no modifications, Jasmine.
It's not modification. They serve you the 2 cheeseburgers, you get the cup of onions, and you do it yourself.
Do it yourself. Okay. You
do it yourself. Yeah.
Modifications. I love
so
it.
good. It's so good.
That's awesome. All right. We're going to talk, as I've mentioned in other episodes, the summer is just a slower time for business news. So that gives me the opportunity to have just some different types of conversations with guests. So the first one, we're going to talk about some new Dick's Drive-In locations. This article came out a little bit ago, but we're going to kind of talk about how you've opened these locations and what's in the future. Then we'll talk about, there's just been some CEO changes in Seattle that we'll mention. And then we'll talk about kind of just the tech industry and how it's really hard to get a tech job and what does that mean for restaurants and how is that impacting it. And we'll talk about the B&O taxes and Jasmine's opinion on that. So let's get to it. All right. The first one, I'm going to recap to my best ability, but obviously this is all about you, so please chime in if I'm wrong. But the article came out when you were opening the Everett location, which was the 10th location, and that opened June 12th, right? Okay, so just kind of rewind in the history of it. My understanding is that the first location was in 1954.
Correct.
And is that the Wallingford one that we're right next door to right now?
Yeah, it's the one right next door here.
Okay, so fun. So then you grow to 5 locations, and this is like in the early 70s. And then in the early 90s, and you can tell more of the story, but your family buys out the other 2 owners. And so at that time, you spent a lot of money buying them out. You're kind of just staying with your 5 locations. And then it wasn't until 2010 where you opened up Edmonds. So that would have made it the 6th location. And then in 2018, you opened Kent. So basically kind of had these 5 locations and then kind of later in the 2000s start opening up more, which is interesting to me because I feel like Dick's is, in my mind, I'm like, they're everywhere. Like, this is the most popular restaurant ever. And so it was surprising to me to hear that there was only 6 locations in 2010.
Yeah. And actually, we didn't open Edmonds until 2011, but we started the search in 2010.
Okay, got it.
But it was the first time we started talking with the broader community and fan base, if you will, about where should we put the next Dick's Drive-In? So we actually did a customer poll. It was the first new location in 37 years, and people got so excited about it. There were 2, we have good reasons to believe it was coming from the 2 different Boeing plants. People hacked our customer poll and had a computer voting. That's also a fun story as we were realizing, oh my gosh, there's way too many votes in this. Like at first we were very excited, like, oh, look, everybody super excited about this.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh wait, this can't be right. We were able to scrub those votes, but North won the poll, and we became aware of the property that we ended up purchasing. It wasn't even on the market, but it was someone connected us, and we My grandfather met with, it was another family business, so the patriarch of that family, and they sat down across the table and talked for 3 hours and shook hands, and we had a deal. And 3 weeks after the poll closed, we announced the new location, and people thought that the poll then was fake. Thought that there was no way we could have gone from an answer to an acquisition in 3 weeks, which in fairness, having now done this a few times, they were right to be skeptical because it will never be that fast ever again. But everything worked out great. And in October of 2011, we opened the first new Dick's Drive-In in 37 years in Edmonds on Pacific Highway.
Okay. And you're up to 10 now. How do you decide your locations? Do you still do this poll and kind of just based on what people want? Or like what other things are you thinking about?
Great question. We did use the poll after that. So we did the first one, we did north, south, or east. We weren't prepared to go west with the ferries, but north, south, or east. The second time when we were looking for our next new location, we did a poll again. We did not think it was going to be as popular. It had been 6 years or something, 7 years, not 37 years. It was just going to be east or south, right? We weren't really sure. And actually, we got 100,000 votes in 24 hours and 170,000 votes in total, which was more than some municipal elections that year. And
bittersweet, sad, but
South won pretty handily. And then that kind of kicked off our search in the South Sound, which took a lot longer this time for various reasons. But we ended up finding our Kent location and building there. And we promised when we went north and south, we said, okay, east, for sure you're next. Like we won't do a poll this time. We're going to find the right location. COVID showed up between when we thought we would start looking east. So that delayed us a while. We had to make sure we were safe to operate just the locations we had.
Right, of course.
And then eventually we felt comfortable moving forward and we opened our Crossroads location in Bellevue in December of 2021. And we'd had a location in Bellevue before, which is the only location we ever closed. It was on Bellevue Way near the post office. There's an Umpqua Bank there now, which is the original building we used to have the Dick's Drive-Ins in Bellevue in. And we actually, the very first stop of our food truck, which we launched between our south location and our east location, was at that Umpqua Bank at that, only location we ever closed. So it was great to be back in Bellevue. And after that, then we just started looking for sites. We had people sending us sites all the time, just kind of constantly for us to look at. And we really just started looking at where the best sites were and speaking to local municipalities and jurisdictions and finding the best locations that are a good fit for us.
Definitely.
So,
well, I'm excited to check out all these locations. And do you feel like breaking news and saying where your next location will be? If you're in the mood.
The timing's not quite right, unfortunately. I
have to try.
We're searching for where Site 11 could be someday, but we have things that we look for. We look for traffic counts, population density, number of high schools nearby. A 24-hour employer is great. We're open till 2 a.m, which I recognize a lot of our customers appreciate because that aligns with going out at night.
Closing,
but it's also, and it was originally there for third shift to serve third shift going home.
Yeah.
So we look for 24-hour employers. That's helpful for a successful location for us. So,
interesting.
And then just there's certain site characteristics too that are important, making it easy to get in and out of the location, the number of parking spots we can have.
I was going to say parking spots. Yeah. So speaking about that, is it a culture decision to not have any seating? Because I know Queen Anne is the only one that has seating, but since COVID, it doesn't have it anymore. Is that a culture decision and a brand decision, or is that a financial decision where are you getting more people churning and burning kind of thing?
It's a variety of things. So you're right. Queen Anne was the only location that had indoor seating. And it was the first one we had put in. And they actually opened Queen Anne after we closed the Bellevue location. And we were mimicking one of our competitors at that time called Herfy's, who actually opened across the street from us in Bellevue and kind of put us out of business there. They're not around anymore, but that Queen Anne looks different than everybody else because it's basically a super Herfy's. It had the same brick styling. It had indoor seating. The deluxe exists because of Herfy's. They had a quarter pounder and we didn't have one yet. So that was, I will always be grateful to Herfy's for that. But because the deluxe is my favorite.
Same.
And it was really successful for a while, but then it was definitely more expensive to operate. It's not as efficient to operate.
Okay.
And then customers kind of had a change in heart, change in feeling, and kind of redirected back towards our classic original restaurants and gravitated more towards those. So it's just not as successful a model. Customers vote with their dollars and their feet, and it just so it doesn't perform as well as the others. So we haven't tried to introduce indoor seating. We are extremely efficient in our other locations as part of how we can have, some of the lowest prices, but use the highest quality meat and pay the best and have the best benefits is because we sell a lot of cheeseburgers. And that makes it possible for us to do all those things.
So Dick's is such an iconic Seattle thing. And I think when something happens like that, there's kind of this urge to expand to other states. For me, Dutch Bros in Oregon, and then you're seeing, what is it called? That chicken place. Like In-N-Out is coming to Washington is a good example. You just see these iconic brands that are so known for a certain part of the U.S. going to other states. And I think their model is typically like a franchise. So have you thought about franchising? Is there a reason why you wouldn't? I guess talk to me about the expansion mindset.
We've talked about franchising, but we right now and haven't at any point in the past believed it was the right choice for us. So delicious burgers, fries, and shakes are wonderful and amazing and really a big part of how we do what we do, but it's definitely not the why. And so our enduring purpose that you'll see on some of these little pictures on the walls are in all of our restaurants and all of our office locations. Our enduring purpose is to provide timeless value and build lifelong memories with our customers, employees, and communities. Doesn't say burgers, fries, and shakes in there anywhere. We have 4 core values. 3 of them are foundational for a reason. You'll see them in a lot of places. So quality, integrity, and the golden rule. And then one that's a little bit unique to us is industriousness. So as we consider expansion and whether to franchise or not and how we grow, those core values are what we need to have to do business. And we are not willing to grow at a pace that makes it not possible for us to live our values or to do our why. We invest in our people and help them achieve their goals out, inside the restaurant and outside. And we invest in the communities we serve. And we need to be able to do all of that as we grow. So that's why our growth is slower than a lot of places. We like to call it sustainable growth. Yeah.
I mean, it's so good to hear from our Seattle leaders that you're not just chasing a dollar, because you probably could open up a bunch more and franchise it and make probably a bunch of money, but that's not at the core of what you do. It's a great answer. My answer would have just been I have control issues, so it's not happening.
I mean, that's also true.
Right, sure. Okay, so another question I got asked on Instagram was basically, why not a veggie burger? But I'm sure you probably have an answer for this. But I kind of want to go a little bit bigger picture in that there's a lot of science to show that people are happier with less choices. And I think, again, I mentioned In-N-Out, but there's other examples of this where it's just because we have the regular burger, the cheeseburger, and the deluxe burger, and then you have fries, right? Am I missing anything?
We have a special. What we call our special burger is very much like the deluxe, but it's only 1 patty and no cheese.
Oh, okay.
And then a while ago, actually right before we opened our Kent location, we added a version of the cheeseburger and the hamburger that have no sauce on it.
Oh, you did?
Because
okay.
Condiments, people have strong feelings about condiments. So although we are not able in the kind of the way we do what we do to do special orders, because the instant service is how we can be so efficient and so quick and allow for the number of transactions that allow for this whole thing to work.
Of course.
Someone can order a cheeseburger that has no sauce on it and put whatever sauces on it that they want, so they can buy, get the other sauces and put them on themselves.
Yeah. But I guess the question is a little bit like, is that a purposeful thing to just keep it super, super limited? Because, obviously all these other restaurants have like hundreds of options or whatever. And with society kind of moving towards more vegetarian, I deal with this in events where you have more gluten-free and dairy-free. What are your thoughts moving forward with Dick's? Are you going to be making changes to the menu, or you think that this is kind of how it is for a while?
Generally speaking, the menu is very consistent. And again, that allows for the efficiency.
Of course. Yeah.
My grandfather used to say, do one thing and do it really, really well. Don't do a million things and do them all poorly. I'm not going to sit here and say the menu will never, ever change, right? Our purpose is to provide timeless value. And so as long as we're able to do that for the vast majority of our customers, then that's something we'll continue to do. We just did a significant market research project of both our customers and potential customers in the region, and got really good feedback from customers on what they would like to see from us. And we were curious on where a veggie burger or a gluten-free option might rank for folks alongside other things. And without getting too specific, it actually wasn't as big a group as
really
we were expecting.
Interesting.
And we've actually been watching, I think Burger King was the first one to do a large-scale quick service veggie burger.
Okay.
I think it was with the Impossible Burger Project. And they started that before COVID, and we were really curious to see how that went. It did not yield the results that Burger King was hoping for. So we've been keeping an eye on it.
Is it more expensive to make? Because I know sometimes that could be.
I'm sure it is more expensive to make. The way that our kitchens, again, are set up, our kitchens are extremely proprietary, very unique to us, and set up to make food in this efficient way. And so
a massive amount quickly.
There's in maintaining our quality, right? So there's limited options for how we could even integrate a veggie burger or a salmon burger or a chicken burger or whatever.
Yeah.
Several of our locations only have one grill. Many of them now have two, but then there's just trade-offs of what you make when. So it's all a solvable problem if there were enough of a need to do it. And, obviously if we wake up tomorrow and there are not enough cows to make burgers, then we'll come up with something else, right?
Yes.
Dick's Drive-Ins doesn't have to end. But our French fries are 100% vegetarian. Our milkshakes are 100% vegetarian. We have a number of customers who tell us they're vegetarian and they enjoy the products that we have. I recognize that there are going to be some vegetarian folks who are listening to this who are getting very mad at me right now. I
apologize for your DM.
Yeah. But
it's a business decision and it makes sense. And it's just maybe not the right time to do it. Yeah. And that's fine.
Now is not the right time. I maybe someday it will be. I'm very interested in trying to solve the gluten problem, and I don't know what the right answer is to that. We've come up with some ideas, but how to do it in a way that works within our system. Our French fries are gluten-free, if anyone's wondering. Hey. Potatoes, sunflower oil, and salt are the only ingredients in our French fries. So, and they're cut live right there. They're not processed ahead of time and frozen with all sorts of additives and stuff. That's not what we do. Just potatoes, sunflower, and salt. So, again, I recognize it's not a meal, but
But no, I think it's good for people to understand the background. I deal with this a little bit in events where I'm doing like an 800-person event, and they're like wanting very specific things for their meal. I'm like, listen, lady, I'm not going to do a special meal for you because we have 800 people. We have to get this out quickly. So I understand there's limitations. But anyway, my last question the whole episode's going to be about Dick's, but my last question on this segment is, I remember the days where it was cash only, and then there was a switch to card. So what were those conversations like? Have you seen an increase in sales from switching to card? I think that also translates with like how us as society moved from cash to card, but I feel like you guys held out a little bit longer. Right now, I think it's only Eastlake Zoo Tavern that's still cash only. But yeah, what was that process like? And was there disagreements? What were your concerns?
So that was a debate for quite a while. And I will say that the green light it was really one of my first major projects here at Dick's.
Making a bold statement coming in.
Yeah. And it's, again, not that it wasn't discussed prior, it was discussed many times prior. It was also the last major project that my grandfather personally greenlit before he passed away.
Okay.
So we accepted the first credit card transaction ever at Dick's in September of 2016. And for a very long time, I had the receipt from that transaction taped to my wall.
Cool.
It was such a big deal. But it took a long time to execute. A number of things had to happen. There were a number of infrastructure pieces that had to happen, including we needed a whole new point of sale system. One of the serendipitous advantages of the timing of when we finally decided to accept credit cards was that at that time, a lot of folks who were already accepting credit cards were going through the whole PCI compliance transition around customer data information and privacy. And we were able to launch like from day one, 100% PCI compliant. And we took Apple Pay from the very first time we ever took a credit card transaction.
You could just kind of jump right in where people were trying to transition into.
Exactly. Yeah. It worked very nicely. But ultimately, the value proposition and how I was able to convince my grandfather that it was finally time. The value proposition that we offer customers is quality food fast and inexpensively. And there were so many people who needed to get cash to be able to purchase the meal that they wanted, especially for their family at Dick's. So at the time, $10 was kind of the line. Anything under $10, a lot of people would still pay with cash. Anything over $10, people wanted to pay with card because they just weren't carrying that much cash with them. Mm-hmm. And we were at the point in our pricing structure, even at that time, that feeding a family of 4 required more than $10. Okay. And so we were not convenient. People had to make a special stop to get cash. They often had to pay a fee out of a cash machine. One of kind of the interim steps we did was put a bunch of cash machines at our location so people could get cash there. And then they had, cash that they didn't want. And so we were able to do some analysis and we were able to make the case that way. And ultimately, my grandfather decided that it was right time to start accepting cards.
What about the processing fees? Does it outweigh the more sales outweighs the fees that you were having to pay?
Oh, absolutely. And handling cash does not come without a cost. So it's not on a statement where you can see it printed, right? But you have to accept and handle the cash and make change, right? So there's the employee time just at the window. There's counting the cash down out of the tills at night. God. Again, employee time.
Yes. We had to go to the bank afterwards.
Get it into the validator. We have to pay a armored car to pick it up. It has to go to the vault. It has to get counted in at the bank. There's a delay between when that cash is received and when it shows up in our bank account. There's a lot of costs to handling cash that, again, aren't easy to just add up into a number. But yes, the impact in sales, the increased inconvenience and ease of purchasing for our customers well outpaced the cost of accepting the cards in the first place.
The only downside is that your workers aren't going to know the sheer panic that I felt when I had to do the quick math of how much change to give somebody.
Yes, so they and honestly, even at the time, they didn't have to do that anymore because we did have registers that said what
even
what
when
the
it told me though, they're still scary to okay, and you're in a rush, the line's out the door, and you're like, here's 3/4, just take it, man, just take it.
We do still accept cash. I don't want anyone to be confused. We do still accept cash.
Good.
We accept credit cards and the vast majority of our transactions are now digital.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next article, which is about CEO changes. So there's kind of 2 that I want to talk about. One is the Smartsheet CEO, Mark Mader. He's retiring after 20 years. And coming up into his place is Suni Gupta. He was the co-founder of Aptio, which is all Seattle company. He's going to be the interim while they look for a permanent, which I'm seeing. I don't know if you're seeing this more. I think we're seeing a lot more interim CEOs while they look for somebody else. If I was in the C-suite and Smartsheet, though, I'd be like, why not me? Why are you bringing an Aptio, some other guy from a different company in? But that's my opinion. Why this is not that surprising is that Smartsheet was bought by private equity, and one of the companies was Vista Equity, and Aptio was also bought by Vista Equity. So in my mind, Vista's like, take this guy. So that's a CEO change. The other one, I don't think I sent you this article, Jasmine, but I found it, is that the First Fed Bank's CEO, Matt Dines, resigns after 6 years. The COO, Geraldine, this isn't whether internal coming in, is going to be an interim before naming a permanent. And this is all around, there was a $100 million lawsuit alleging that First Fed assisted in a Ponzi scheme. I love a fraud story, especially a Ponzi scheme story. And it involved a water purification. So this is, again, obviously all allegedly, but is interesting timing that the CEO resigns right around this lawsuit. So that's as much as I'll get into the details of that one. Maybe I'll do a deep dive on Ponzi schemes later. But this kind of brings up the topic of assuming a leadership role. Did you know you were going to be tapped to be the CEO? Do you have siblings? I should have looked this up, that were like maybe possibly going to do it. Like, was this always going to be your path? Tell me about that.
There's a lot there. So I did not know that this was the path I was going to go on, although it was when I returned in 2013 to join the executive team, that was a likely direction. Family businesses are unique in many ways, and I know you wanted to talk about that a little bit later, but it definitely ties into this.
You can share it now if you want.
And what a family business is and a generation one situation versus a generation two situation versus a generation three situation are very different. And there are similar challenges across family businesses, and it's been a unique pleasure of the role to get to meet and learn from other family businesses and hear their stories. And we have similar themes, but all somewhat unique circumstances. So in our case, our family business is owned by our second generations, my dad and his siblings. And then I'm third generation as the CEO.
Oh, so your dad still owns it, but you are the CEO, is that right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Well, and my dad and his siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother we've a couple different kinds of ownership. So she's also an owner as well. And so there's some Gen 1, Gen 2 owners, and I'm Gen 3 working for the business. Someday I will be an owner. Mm-hmm. But going through the transitions from I'm a business to I'm a family business and kind of Gen 1, that's a big transition. And then going from Gen 1 to Gen 2, kind of playing that out. There's a certain psychology of shared experience, which is a phrase I heard in one of my first family business trainings that I was at, that Gen 2 has, that Gen 3 does not have. So in our case in particular, the youngest member of Gen 3 for us is younger than my youngest son. And the oldest is a little over 50. And we live in a few different states and have different paths. And so getting from Gen 3 to Gen 4, for example, takes something very different than what it took to get from Gen 1 to Gen 2 or from Gen 2 to Gen 3.
I've heard that if you can make it past Gen 3, then that's a good sign. But Gen 3 is the hardest time to keep going on a family business in general.
There's lots of somewhat universal reasons why. And some of it is some of the structure that you just inherently need to make it through a group that, from a group that's grown up together to a group that, while familiar with each other, not. Mm-hmm. And we've put a lot of things in place, learned from other family businesses who've done this successfully or investing time and treasure to figure this out. And part of all of this is, what does it mean to lead the family business? Does it have to be a family member? What happens if there isn't a family member with the skills or qualifications or interest to lead the business? Mm-hmm. Those are all fundamental questions that family businesses have to address. So in our case, I was there with the right skills at the right time, and it worked really well. We're trying to cultivate the next generation of leaders, and it's possible. And I think in many ways preferable if there's a family member who has the skills and the interests and is ready. Mm-hmm. But I think we've gotten past the point where it doesn't have to be a family member. We could have a professional CEO at some point if we needed it. And that's been part of the transition that I've been helping oversee. And actually, when I took the role, when I accepted the role, I put an end date on my time as CEO to make sure that we were all clear on, I am a steward of the business for a defined window of time. And we have to be constantly working to get ready for the next transition. My grandfather was president for life. And while that had some advantages, it had many disadvantages, especially later on. And it meant we had some rough patches transitioning from Gen 1 to Gen 2 and then Gen 2 to Gen 3 in kind of pretty quick fashion. So it'll be something that evolves over time. And I say often, people are going to put this on my gravestone, it's gardening, not engineering, right? And the family is inherently changing no matter what we do, right? New spouses, new children, the children grow up, they go to college, they're now professionals. Nothing is set in stone forever. And what we're doing right now that's working for us as a family right now is not necessarily going to work for us in 5 years or 10 years. And also now that the business is growing again, the business is in a similar state where the business isn't the same. And the business isn't the same as it was 5 years ago. And it's not going to be the same 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Yeah. And also Seattle, kind of in surrounding area is changing dramatically. And our business environment is changing. It looks obviously so different than what it did in 1954, but it looks very different than what it was in 2000 or 2010. And so what's working or what's providing timeless values for customer today might not be the same in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, right?
Including, and what you're saying is kind of including yourself. Maybe I'm not for my family or for the business.
Correct.
Later on down the road might not be the fit. Do your kids, do they think about wanting to do it? Do they want to work at Dick's?
I had a really sweet conversation with them the other day. My oldest was talking about, he just was talking to his younger brother, and he was talking about, well, then I'll have to be the president of Dick's Drive-In next because, mom was the oldest, and then she became the president, and then I have to be president next. Yeah. And we had a conversation about like, no, that's not how it works, right? The ownership is passed down from generation to generation, but the CEO role is definitely not. And there are things that you can do that if you're interested in that job, that we can develop you over time. And also you probably won't be ready by the time I'm ready to step out of it, just so we're clear. So we had a good conversation about that. I asked him afterwards, I was like, how do you feel about all of that? He said, well, if I'm honest, I'm a little disappointed because it means I'm not guaranteed to have a job. He said, but actually I'm also very relieved because I really want to play baseball, and it would be hard to be a professional baseball player and be the CEO of Dick's at the same time. And I said, that's very true. That's true.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you think about succession planning, but I think you kind of answered that, and that you're not specifically looking at one person. It doesn't have to be in the family. And I think that's so good. I've worked in a family business in my past, and it's been frustrating where the skill, it feels like nepotism. You're like, did this person just get this job because they are related to the family? Whereas you're saying skills really come into play. We really want to make sure the right person is in here, whether they're related or not. Yeah.
Yes, we have to have that. The business is too important, we think, to the community. And to be very transparent, I may not have had the opportunity for a CEO or president role at my age and with my resume if I wasn't, part of the family. That's true. There's definitely some nepotism there. But I was able to grow into the role, and I did bring skills and experience to the role. And again, I've grown with the business. The business was in a different place when I took the role than where it is.
All right, we're going to move on to kind of the labor market. And you talked a bit about how much you care about the people that are working for you. There's 2 articles that came out that I'll link in the show notes. But to kind of sum it up, things are not looking good for the tech world, especially college graduates that are graduating with computer science or computer engineering. They were all kind of quote unquote promised that they'd have a tech job. And now AI is replacing some entry level jobs, or they are laying people off because the companies are investing in AI. And then we also have AI screening applicants. So people will apply and then, 3 minutes later will get denied. And some of these people trying to get this job are now looking into restaurant work. The example they gave in the article was like McDonald's or Chipotle. And then the other article was kind of just talking about how some people are wanting potentially to do some contract work over full-time work. But I want to talk to you about, have you seen your applicant pool change recently in Seattle from maybe potentially some people that got laid off in the tech community, or has that kind of not really changed for you? Or I don't know if you see some of that.
Oh, we do. Our applicant pool is a lot better than it was a few years ago.
Okay.
Coming out of COVID in particular, the customers kind of came back overnight, but the employees did not come back overnight. And it's not that we laid or furloughed anyone off, but we had just lower demand. We had some pretty slow locations for a while, especially. We kept all of our locations open, even the ones downtown, and they were not doing well. So if people left, we didn't always replace those bodies. So hiring coming out of COVID was really, really difficult. And we also have had to and continue to have to adapt to what employees find as timeless value for them, coming back to this concept of timeless value out of work. We suddenly had competition from, I'm air quoting here, but flexible jobs. We always considered our jobs flexible because we have lots of hours to choose from. But a consistent schedule is something both we need and employees used to value. But the employees, especially coming out of COVID, wanted fewer hours, and they wanted the ability to pick up shifts the way that they pick up, Uber driving routes. Like, I feel like working today and I don't feel like working tomorrow. And that can change from week to week. That's something that's really hard for us to adapt to. And we're kind of slowly over time trying to put some different technology solutions in place to make that possible. Most people don't realize it takes the average employee 2 years to get fully trained in our kitchens. So It's not something that someone just walks in and is able to do. We don't require any outside skill or experience, just a willingness to learn. But there's a procedure for everything in our kitchens. And, from serving the customer at the window to every kind of station, and everybody gets trained to do everything over time. So if someone wants to tap out and they're fully qualified, I can't just replace that with the brand new person who just joined. Grill is the last thing anyone learns. And then, there's being proficient in grill, and then there's being what we call a grill expert, which is a whole different level. So it takes time and experience and time and position, just practice. It's a physical job. That's the other thing that's changed a lot, is that physical jobs used to be a lot more common. And a lot of people are coming to us now not having ever experienced an 8-hour shift on their feet or a physical, just the physical activity of working in our kitchens. And we're trying to adapt to that too, right? Our learning and development team is putting together some stretches and, yoga poses and things that you should do in your first few weeks.
I don't know if I could do it again at 36, because I worked front desk at a hotel, and we stood the entire 8-hour shift. I was standing at a hotel. And then, the restaurant too, of course. And I don't know if I could do that again. I would have to be doing those stretches. And
it's not just it's standing. There's hustle in our kitchen. Right. No one's running, but you have to move quickly, and there's a lot of activity, and it's uncommon anymore. Used to be common, but it's not anymore. So we're a little bit unique in that way. So all of those things, the labor market is changing around us in lots of ways. On the change in kind of the technology situation, we've seen this before. So with the .com bubble, it was really hard to hire, and then the bubble burst. And yes, we had a lot of folks coming out of the .com bubble who came back to work for us. So I'm sure we will see that at some point. I imagine we will. My heart goes out to anyone who is either graduating from college right now or has a child graduating from college right now. I'm very grateful that my kids are a little ways from that. And this disruption will hopefully be farther along by the time they have to make those choices. It's going to be an interesting and challenging transition.
And then did the minimum wage change? We talked about this with Ascend Hospitality episode, and I think a little bit with Chad McKay, but did that impact you? Because you were already paying above, but did you feel like you have to do even more?
Yes. Yeah. Because we have to pay more than minimum, right? So we're always paying more than minimum. So it did impact us. It definitely resulted in higher prices sooner, and just the reality of how the math works.
Yeah.
And I actually had just joined the executive team when all of the minimum wage conversations were happening here in Seattle. And we had an op-ed in the Seattle Times. I had an op-ed in the Seattle Times around that time describing an alternative solution that we had, because we were very concerned on the impact to the younger workforce and the low-skill workforce, or the first-time jobs. And that it's played out and been true, right? It is very hard to find a job as a high school student. And it's just the reality. We can only hire so many. I mean, we were limited prior because you have to get a variance from the state for high school students to work in our kitchens. That's been true for a long time. So we can only have so many of them in any of our kitchens. And there's restrictions on hours that they can work, and different jobs that they can do. Which is all reasonable and understandable. But what we had proposed in that op-ed as an alternative was a minimum wage aligned with your educational achievement as an incentive to finish high school or get your GED. And then if you get a community college degree, your minimum wage is higher. And if you get a college degree, your minimum wage is higher. And so it creates a societal incentive to pursue education, which no one took our suggestion, but and here's where we are.
You tried.
But we pay above minimum wage, and we have the best benefits, and we think that's important to our why and how we do what we do, and so we still do that regardless of what the minimum wage is. But
so speaking of city council rules and how it impacts small businesses and restaurants and such, I wanted to give you an opportunity. We've talked about the B&O taxes. It's like the hot topic in the business community these days. Yeah. I talked to a tech company about it. It feels like most people don't like it. And for those, just really quick, the recap essentially is it would eliminate B&O taxes for a lot of small businesses. I want to say I think it's 76%, and it would lower what I have to pay for 90%, which all sounds fine and good, except for it increases it for all the other companies, which you might be thinking, okay, well, who cares? Amazon pays more. We don't really care. But the cutoff is $2 million in revenue or more. And for those that don't know, that's not that much in revenue for businesses. Those are not the Amazons. Those are probably small businesses that you go and frequent. So I think it's having this downside of increasing it for a lot of small businesses. The whole reason is to help with the revenue shortfall in the city. So, Jasmine, what's your take on the B&O taxes?
We probably don't have time for my full take, because to have my full take, we would have to talk about the revenue shortfall that was mentioned, which I cannot allow to simply just pass.
You've read another op-ed.
There's been a number of articles on that, and perhaps one from Rachel Smith from the Chamber, others could go in the show notes about what we're calling a revenue shortfall. However, and you're right, $2 million is actually not that much for revenue. And especially for labor-intense businesses or asset-intense businesses. And there are a number of small businesses that are going to be impacted negatively by this. There's also a timing challenge. There's been some of the largest tax increases in decades from the state that just passed. We added the payroll tax, the minimum wage increase.
It's all coming at the same time.
Administrative cost burden in the last 10 years has gone up dramatically. The cost of doing business in this town has gone up dramatically. And you're seeing it in the prices of everything, and you're seeing it in articles about how expensive it is to live here and work here and play here. And also, we're not getting the services for it that one would expect. Right. And the Chamber does regular surveys called the Index, and citizens are not pleased with what they're getting for their money from the city. And I think there's lots of directions we could go with that, but it seems like the wrong time to add more money to the pot without gaining more confidence in how that money is going to be spent. And the B&O tax conversation with small and medium businesses in particular, again, going back to the days of minimum wage, and I'll just speak to the conversations I was part of. Very early in the minimum wage conversations, there was also conversations from city leaders about, well, hey, we're going to reduce B&O taxes to kind of offset some of this burden. That never happened. The next step was, hey, we're really short on police. We need to increase the B&O tax to hire more police. Will you guys support that? We said, sure, yeah, we need more police. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, we're here for it. And we did it. And guess what? We didn't get more police. And then we went through everything we've been going through the last several years with SPD and the shortage of police officers and the public safety challenges, which add real costs to doing business here, including I have private security at all of my locations.
I've noticed, yeah.
That is extremely expensive. And I'm doing that because the city is not delivering on their contract to provide public safety.
Anything, I've talked to other businesses that install like a camera system, then, or if they don't and they get broken into, it's on them. The insurance isn't really covered, their window break. There's all these stories where the cost of it.
Insurance covers it, and even if you've never made a claim, the increase in the cost of insurance for a business in Seattle has been astronomical. And we're a long-time client of our insurance provider. And you go out to bid to get property insurance and liability insurance. Only our incumbent would even bid our insurance because we're in Seattle and because we're open late.
Whoa. Yeah, people don't want to insure it. Yeah. It's
so expensive. So and a lot of people think, oh, well, it's mostly property damage and, it's a victimless crime because they have insurance and but it's not.
It's not.
It's not. It's not a victimless crime when my, shift managers have to deal with that at 1 a.m. It's not a victimless crime when my customers don't feel safe being on my patio and getting my food. It's not a victimless crime when my insurance more than doubles, and a lot of small businesses that are trying to open new businesses here in Seattle can't even get coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it trickles down to, increased rates for customers and things like that.
So in the context of all of that, and the city says, oh, we need to increase the B&O tax.
Are you serious?
Yes. That's more of the reaction.
That's the sentiment of like, are you serious? We've done so much. We're not getting this back. And you're going to do this right now?
Yes.
Yeah. That makes sense. I totally agree. I think I was talking to somebody about just the $2 million and that it's based on revenue and not profit. So somebody that has a lot of expenses in their company may not be profitable, have a small profit, but still be charged a lot more in taxes. So I think, look, I get the idea that they need more money, but this just ain't it. It feels like it ain't it.
Yeah. So, and we should have a whole nother episode on whether they need more money or don't need more money. So that's just a different conversation.
Yeah. I'll do like a special episode. We can do like a little roundtable with other CEOs.
Perfect.
And talk about it. Okay. I've taken enough of your time. So before we wrap, just really quick, what do you do to get motivated when you don't feel like doing your job? You wake up and you're like, I just don't want to run Dick's Drive-In anymore. Or right now. I mean, not anymore.
That's a really great question. A lot of times it will be just talking to my kids. Honestly, it's meeting with the crew members. So after they pass their first skills test, I get to meet with them. And so I go out every month. I go to a couple locations and I sit down in a room with them. I tell my grandfather's story, and then I ask them, like, what should we do for our customers? What can we do better? What should we solve here? And especially when I get a group that's full of energy and ideas and excitement and really get into the story, that's so motivating.
Yeah.
Meeting someone and having them tell me their Dick's Drive-In story.
Yeah, like building off other people's energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Jasmine, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me. And I'm definitely going to be walking across the street to get a Dick's Burger. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks for having me on.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.